Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a really kind of raw video in a lot of ways. I am going to try to do this as a one-take video, almost as if I'm doing a live, but it also is going to be raw because it's going to get down to a lot of things that carry a lot of kind of emotions with them. Today we're going to chat about our experience with dyslexia. Hey guys, if you are new to my channel, my name is Megan and I'm a homeschooling mom. Before that, I was a public school teacher. And as I said, today I'm going to be sharing our experience and story with dyslexia. The reason I say ours, obviously it is the struggle of my son. It is what he struggles with. But it also includes you as a parent, if you have a child with dyslexia, especially if you're a home educator, because of a lot of reasons that I'll get into in this video. But yes, it is my son's struggle, but it's hard as a mom to see your child struggle and go through that and not feel some, struggle along with that. And also to be a part of that, like to play a role in helping him overcome the struggle that he is having. So that's really what this video is going to be about, kind of the story in our home of the discovery of it, maybe a few early signs that that we experienced and noticed in him. I know I've had a lot of these questions, I've had a lot of questions like, what were some of the signs that you noticed? How did you know he had it? What were the warning signs? Those kinds of things. So I'm going to get into a little bit of that, not a lot of it, because there's almost, with dyslexia, I'll start here. With dyslexia, it manifests in different ways. It deals with processing, really. There's almost like this spectrum within the realm of dyslexia of how, like, what those warning signs can be and how it manifests and stuff like that. I'm going to kind of get into just, again, like my son's experience, our experience with it, and hopefully this is helpful to some of you guys. There actually was kind of some doubt in there of like, oh no, that's not what it is. And kind of almost like denial that could be what the issue was. Not that I saw anything wrong with it. I just thought, I don't think that's it. Surely that's not it. Sure enough, it was. And that became more evident as he got older. So let's start at the very beginning. So I kind of wanted to give that background. Sorry, I'm a little all over the place. I told you this was going to be very raw. So if I go back to the very, very beginning and I look back, there were, I think, some warning signs very, very early on. There was a point in time where we questioned if maybe he could be colorblind, because it was like no matter how many times we would go over like colors and the names of colors, he still would get them wrong. Sometimes it was kind of odd. It was like, but he knows his colors. But some days it was like he couldn't bring out, like process what color it was. Like he would get it mixed up and stuff. And so looking back, I think that might have been like a very, very early sign. Seems kind of random. Some people, might not think that would be. I don't really know if it for sure is, but looking back, there was a lot of things like that we see in his reading process now that I think definitely played a role for him with that whole processing aspect of things. So that's something. The other thing is we would go over his letters, like letters and sounds with him from the time he was literally a baby. I actually have a video of him cracking up when he was a baby because I had my iPad out and I was pushing the letters and it would say ba ba ba, and he thought it was so funny because I used to sit and just push, like we would discover the letters and the sounds even from him being a baby. And, in kindergarten, I noticed it just wasn't sticking with him. Like none of it, nothing was sticking with him. And, or it would for a day, but then he would forget, or he would get it mixed up with something like that. And I just thought, okay, kindergarten, maybe he's just not ready for the whole reading process. You know, some kids are later readers. And so that was kind of like what I resorted to in my mind with a lot of it. And so we tried a couple of things. We started off very gentle with My Father's World Kindergarten, which, if you're familiar with that, it's a very gentle, week by week, you have a different letter that you introduce and things like that. And it just wasn't really going anywhere. It was like we would do those weekly studies on letters, but the ones that we had learned previously never really stuck. The sounds and things like that. And so I decided, okay, well, you know, everybody talks about 100 easy lessons to teach your child to read. And it just, there was such a disconnect there. There's like an exercise where you say, okay, I'm going to say motor, boat, say boat. Now say it fast. Like there's an exercise called say it fast. And the key is that they're supposed to say motor, boat, motorboat. And so that was an exercise that never translated. Another early sign was the inability to rhyme. He actually was not able to really understand the rhyming process, like what really rhymed, until around 3rd grade, after lots and lots and lots of practice. That was an early sign. You know, I think a lot of people with dyslexia, they're like, oh, well, my child writes their letters backwards. That can be completely normal up until around the age of 8. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have dyslexia. It's not just transposing or flip-flopping letters. It's more of the process as a whole. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that. They associate, dyslexia, he's writing something backwards. Well, sometimes kids who are left-handed will write a word backwards, but it's not because they're dyslexic. It's because of just learning how to, the process of things. And so I think there's a lot of misconception there with what dyslexia is in the first place. And it's more of the whole process of the brain and not being able really to do that. And there's so many different facets of it, like I said. Like I gave some examples of the rhyming and never, the phonics sounds, like never sticking and things like that. And yes, transposition of letters and things like that is a part of it, but that's not like the number one indicator. So, let's see what other early signs. So 100 easy lessons didn't work for us. So there was one curriculum, one resource that didn't work for us. So then we moved on to Learning to Read from Christian Light Education. It's a pretty intensive reading program. It's a phonics base, but it also has some sight words. And it's an excellent, excellent program. It is the only one that he made any gains whatsoever in, but it still just was not sticking. And I think that is when it became extremely apparent to me something is not right. When we were halfway through 1st grade and couldn't even remember letter sounds, like basic letter sounds, even though we were consistent with it, that was when it became very, very apparent to me that there was something wrong. So 2nd grade, even more so. Like that was the absolute, like I knew for sure there's something wrong. And that's when I started putting the pieces together and really coming to terms with the fact that I was pretty certain he had dyslexia. So we continued with Learning to Read because he was making gains. And I think a big part of dyslexia, so some kids, dyslexia can be relatively mild in, and the reading process just takes longer to learn, and they can typically cope and fill in the gaps, like with coping skills, basically. Some kids are more profound, where they end up being in 3rd grade and not being able to read. And that is kind of where we were. So I began the search for something that would be life-changing as far as curriculum goes. And so we actually tried Pride Reading Program, and it was exactly what we needed. Now, I don't always recommend it for every single person. I think it's an amazing program, but unless you can devote every day to 45 minutes a day, you and them, intensive. It's the whole process and method of the program that makes it so effective. And so if you're not willing to put in the work and devote the time and effort into really executing the program the way it should be, then I wouldn't recommend it. So that's why. Not because I don't think that it's effective. I absolutely think it's effective. It's really what gave him the push to get where he needed to be, to get on the path to just really kind of making some of those gains and being able to read and things like that. So we finished the first level. I think it's the yellow level, and it was so intensive. It was so intensive, but like I said, it was so effective and so good. The methods were great. It is an Orton-Gillingham approach. And so we had a really good experience with it. However, it was very difficult on our relationship as mom and son. But it was also starting to really take a toll on him. While it was encouraging to him that he had made so many gains, it was also discouraging. He needed a break from the intensity of it. But he was also at a point where he could still hold his own with what he was, like new concepts he was learning and things like that. So the pieces were slowly starting to connect and come together. And so it got us to a point where we could use something like All About Reading. So last year we did All About Reading Level 2, and it went very well. I was very proud of him. And now we have moved into Level 3, and he seems to be doing very well with that as well. We are at a point now where we want to give just that extra little push, and so a friend of mine at church very graciously, who is very familiar with dyslexia and actually trained in a lot of the approaches used and tactics used to help with dyslexia, she actually is tutoring him one day a week for an hour, and it has been so good. He just really needed another cheerleader, like sometimes you just need to know that someone else is in your corner cheering you on to get you, just really get you going and bring up the encouragement again. And it's just a really great experience. So that's kind of where we are. He is at a level now where he is able to read some small chapter books. He does still require some help from time to time, but he can read through the Level 3 Sunlight readers, which is what he's doing this year as his independent reading, and needs minimal help from me. It might take some slower, it might be at a slower pace, but it is really, it's huge growth. And there are times when I think about it and it makes me very emotional just to think about all the growth that he has had. And he and I actually were reflecting on it not too long ago, just about the amount of growth that he had just in the past 2 years, when it had been such a struggle previously the years before. And him coming from a place where he felt almost helpless, and felt defeated and dumb, for lack of a better word. That's the word that was used by him. And knowing that regardless of the struggle, that we found things that worked, and he had cheerleaders in his corner, and he feels like he has accomplished so much because he has. And so that's basically the story of our experience thus far with dyslexia. Obviously, it is not something that ever goes away because it does deal with the processing. It is something that will always be a struggle for a child, even into adulthood and things. It is interesting to me, it's always interesting to me where there is such, quote, weakness, how many strengths there are, even though there's like a big weakness, quote unquote. He's very, very good at math. It comes very easy to him. And this is something that I think is really cool. And this isn't always true with kids with dyslexia, but his comprehension is through the roof. There were times early on when he was really starting to get his start with reading that it would take him what seemed like forever to get through a page of words, and you would think there's no way he comprehended any of that. And he could tell me exactly what was just talked about and what he read. And it always has astounded me. Like, there's times where we're doing read alouds even, and I'll be like, do you even know what I just read? Did you even hear anything I just read? Because I know like he's focused on something else, and he'll tell me almost word for word, and I'm like, seriously? Anyway, but that is something that is a huge strength, which isn't always true with dyslexia. Again, there's kind of that spectrum within there of like what the issue, like what the struggles and issues are. And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted to share what our experience has been thus far. I think it's hard. Also, I was talking to my good friend Katie over at Life in the Mundane. We've talked about this pretty extensively because she's got a few kids that struggle with this as well. And there are times where you go through the thought process of fear, because your fear is that you just want your child to be able to, function in a world that is, involves so much writing. And then there's also like this feeling of anger sometimes, not at your child, just at the disability in general. There's times where you have major frustration because you will literally have a week where there are so many gains and you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And then the next week, everything is gone. It's like they never learned it. And again, it's all that processing and putting those pieces together and things like that. And so the road it's hard. It's hard. It's hard as a parent, as a home educator, and it's incredibly hard for them. And so I think that it's one of those things where, like, when you are a parent of a child with any disability, it sometimes can feel lonely. And so that's one of the reasons why I made this video was hopefully if you are a parent, a home educator yourself, who is walking this road with your child, hopefully this gives you encouragement. Stay consistent, stay persistent, but also stay in their corner. So hopefully this video leaves you with some encouragement. And if you have any questions or want to share your story down in the comments below, I hope that you do. And I will see you guys on future videos. Thanks so much, guys, and have a blessed day.